Okay. John McEldowney, Program Manager, Placer County Office of Emergency Services. We actually have a lot of different agencies here that we're going to try and answer your questions. We're going to go through a quick fire update briefing, and then we're going to try and get to some of your questions. We got a frequently asked question sheet back there and also some other information on the table. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Harris of the Nevada-Yuba Placer Unit.
Well, good evening, and thank you for attending tonight. What I'm going to attempt to do is give you a little bit of history on what brought us to where we are tonight, how the fire started. I can't tell you exactly how the fire started yet, but what caused the fire to grow to the size that it did go. As you're all aware, yesterday about 1:20, 1:25 in the afternoon, a series of fires ignited along Interstate 80 on the east side. We dispatched our normal dispatch to that, which is 6 state engines and then all of the local government engines, the Placer Hills Fire Protection District engines that were in the area. So right off the gate, we had 8 fire engines, 2 bulldozers, 2 hand crews, 2 air tankers, an air aircraft, air coordination aircraft, and 2 helicopters responding to it. When the first engine arrived on scene, which I believe was a Placer Hill engine, we found that we had a total of 5 different fires burning along Interstate 80, basically from Applegate all the way up to Weimar Crossing. The smallest one was about a 1/4 acre. The other remaining were 1/2 acre, a little bit larger than that. Immediately, we ordered additional engines and aircraft to the scene because we knew that we had a potentially large fire building. The fire started in what we call heavy vegetation. It started in the timber, which is generally difficult to control in the best of circumstances for it. But when you have 5 fires burning at the same time, it multiplies that difficulty by 5 times. So within the first half hour of the fire being reported, we had 45 engines en route, which is a large number of fire engines. We doubled the order of aircraft, ordered more dozers, ordered more hand crews. We ordered more of everything because we knew that this fire had the potential to spread into something that was going to be difficult to put out. Let's talk a little bit about what caused the fire itself to spread the way that it did. I think everybody's aware that we have been in a severe drought now for several years, culminating in this year, which is the worst part of the drought that we've seen so far. To give you an idea of the way that our fuels, the things that are burning right now, we classify them through several different... Did that die? That one quit on me, I think. I already killed the microphone.
No, this one. Is it red? This one should be.
My firefighter stated I don't need a microphone anyway, so I'll work without the net here. We classify our fuels into different categories basically by hours that they burn. The largest category that we deal with is what we call our 1,000-hour fuels. They're the fuels that are bigger than 6 inches in diameter. To give you an idea of the weight and the condition of the fuels that we are burning to date so far, they don't trust me. In those 1,000-hour fuels, in fires that we've had in this very area, not along the freeway, but at different locations throughout your community, since the beginning of May, we found that those 1,000-hour fuels, which would normally take a day or 2 to be completely consumed by the fire, were being consumed within 4 hours. Oh, wow. So that gives you an idea of how dry the fuels are out there. Also, another influencing factor on fires is terrain. The Applegate, Weimar area is in terrain that gets very steep very quickly. So that's going to cause the fire to spread a little bit quicker. The third thing that kind of sent us over the edge yesterday was the wind. We had wind speeds in excess of 15 miles an hour at the time that the fire was burning. So with those 3 factors combining together, we had the perfect recipe to have a large fire. So we have 5 fires that start along Interstate 5. We were able to contain one of the fires at about a 1/4 acre. The other 2 other fires we contained at 1 acre and 5 acres. The remaining 2 fires joined together and formed the larger fire that you see here. That is now about 420 acres. with a 20-acre spot at the very head of the fire. The wind direction coming from this way, it was just blowing the fire downhill. Normally when we have fires in this area, they start at the bottom of the canyon and burn their way to the top. The winds were actually causing them to burn the opposite direction that they normally burn for us. In some ways that's going to slow the fire spread down because it's having to burn the opposite way that it wants to burn. But it creates an even bigger problem for us. Now we've got fire that wants to burn down into the American River Canyon in very steep, inaccessible terrain. The fear is, or was, that the fire would burn all the way down to the river, travel laterally, and then use the terrain to burn back into our community. That's our biggest fear. We're not out of the woods yet, literally, but we are not completely out of danger because we still have a lot of burning materials. And Chief Chris Paulus is going to come up in a little bit and talk about where we are in the suppression of the fire right now. We made some great headway today, but we're not done. We're a long ways from done. So that's what's influencing our decision-making process right now. We've been very aggressive in fighting the fire. We've deployed a lot of aircraft. Those that have been in the area today probably noticed the DC-10 that's been flying around and the heavy air tankers. So we have applied a lot of retardant to stop the forward spread of the fire as it's sitting right now. The fire did not gain much ground on us today, maybe an acre or two. So that's very good news. The bad news is that it's in timber, and we're going to see more winds subside or come down to the surface level in the next couple days as a storm front passes through. So the risk of possibly taking a burning ember out of the main body of the fire, throwing it out into the unburned area is still there, creating spot fires. That's one of the things that we're working on, one of the things we're concerned about as we speak. The fire, and one of the things we're going to talk about at the end is 5 or 6 homes were destroyed in the fire. So what I'm going to do at the end of the presentation after we get through the questions is I'm going to call out a couple streets that the homes were destroyed on and have the people that live on that street come up, and we can privately talk to you about the condition of your home. Not every home was destroyed on those streets, so we want to make sure that we give you a little privacy when we talk about homes that were destroyed. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Paulus, and Chris can let you know where we are in the firefight right now.
Thank you, Chief. Again, Chris Paulus, I was operations day on the fire. I'm also the local CAL FIRE battalion chief out there on the fire. Can everyone see this little red dot here on the map, or is it too small? Okay, let's fix that. Kevin, may I borrow your map? There's a pointing stick. Old school. I looked for the button on it, but I couldn't find it. Okay, let's get you folks oriented here. Here's Interstate 80 here. This is the Heather Glen Estates Mobile Home Park out there. North Fork of the American River. This is the Ponderosa Road coming down in. Right into here, actually on the backside over here, on this long ridge here. And then again, the Applegate community down in here. Colfax will be up to our north there. As the Chief explained to you, the big concerns are the conditions of fuels. Maybe to elaborate, burning the timber conditions. A good rule of thumb is any burning snag, dead tree within 300 feet of the fire line is a hazard to those spot fires alone. Yesterday spotting was up to a quarter mile from ember cast alone. So that's what we're dealing with. Our probability ignition, that's an ember brand landing and causing a spot fire occur yesterday was up in the 70s and 80s. So that means that for every 100 fire brands, 70 to 80 had the potential of starting a spot fire. All right. Those burned indices went down today, which is a good thing. So with that being said, here's the status. Up here, Division Golf, that small fire contained. We got line around that, looking very good there. Division Alpha here coming down. Again, here's the Ponderosa Road here. Got a good line coming down. Lines are holding. We're mopped up about 50 to 100 feet in. As we come down into, we call it Division Foxtrot from these two little lines there. We got line all the way around to about here on the bottom part. And we're going direct with hand crews and dozers and hose lays. Division Yankee, right here, and this is Heather Glen right here. Likewise, we're going direct with hand crews, engine companies, and dozers. Between this point here and this point here, approximately 2,000 feet of open line remains. The operational challenge for us is this. Hard to see, but this little creek that comes down right here, this is Codfish Creek here. Gravity wants to pull the rolling, burning material down the slope. That's our challenge right there. Our folks are engaged tonight. We'll continue to press our attack. It's been very successful. What we are concerned with very simply is right here is a nice patch of timber. Our concern is that the fire may roll out, and that is it may, and if it gets established on this side, run back up this slope. But we're working hard to contain that fire tonight. Containment right now is at 30%. With that being said, come down to this spot fire here. Talk to our folks out there tonight. They're confident they'll get line around it about this time and pick up that spot fire. So with that said and done, what we're looking at here is a small piece of fire from here to here, but lots of work out there. It will take days to mop it up. And I know Chief will address this, but the big issue is when you get a chance to return to your homes, about your safety and going back to your home safely. And that's what this game is really about. Chief?
No, I got you to point. So, and again, Chris brought up a very important point, and I'm sure it's important to all of you. When do I get to go back home? There's a number of factors that we're evaluating before we make that decision. We're going to start working on that decision. We're working on it tonight, trying to come up with a game plan and a repopulation plan. And it's going to be a two-part repopulation plan. We know that that PG&E is out working in the unaffected burn areas to reestablish electrical service to everybody out there. The big issue that we have within the affected area, within the burn itself, is that the fire not only burned the trees and the vegetation and a few homes in there, but it also took out all of the power poles, transformers, and everything else. So there's down power lines throughout that burned area. It's a concern to us as they start to re-energize those, making sure that the systems that are being put back up are sound, that they're tested, and that we're not inadvertently energizing lines that are down on the ground that anybody may step on. The other issue within the burned area itself is we have a large number of firefighters working in that area. We have 1,200 firefighters assigned to this incident. So as much as we would like to get you back into your homes, we want to make sure that we're doing it in an absolute safe and orderly manner so that we don't get anybody injured as we start to allow you to go back into your homes. So when we do start talking about repopulation, allowing you to go back into your homes, and I'm going to bring the team up here in a little bit to talk about the planning process. Remember, it's going to be a two-phase plan. One is going to be those residences that are not within the burn area itself and those residences that are within the burned area. As I spoke about a little bit ago, we have a large firefighting force on hand right now. We have 1,200 firefighters assigned to this incident. That number may have gone up a bit as resources start to come in a little bit later than the other ones. To do that, we have to be able to manage it. We set up a small city at the fairgrounds right now to make sure that the firefighters are cared for, that they're fed, that they're given proper direction, and that all of their needs are met. In order to do that, we brought in what we call an incident command team, or incident management team now. I'm old. It used to be command team. We've got an incident management team that's overseeing the operation, working for me as the chief of this area. There's 6 of these teams in California. This is Team 1. I'd like to invite Will Darnell and Steve Curley to come up, or one of the two. We'll see who loses the flip. And to talk about where they are right now in the planning process and to talk a little bit about repopulation.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, as you mentioned, my name is Will Darnell. I am the Deputy Incident Commander for CAL FIRE's Incident Management Team 1. We assume command of this incident tonight at 6 p.m., so we are now in charge of the fire. We were handed a very good product by your local folks, so I'm going to start out by saying that. A lot of times when our teams are activated, a lot of times when our teams are activated, we're expected to come in and put together a plan for the next day. When we got here this morning, there was a plan in place, there were resources in place, so when we showed up this morning, we transitioned with the unit, but everything was already in place and moving, and we didn't have to take care of that, which we normally would. So again, a job well done. So where we're at now is, as the chief stated, some good work was done out there yesterday, last night, and today, and through the night they'll be hitting it hard. So we task our folks that are out there on the ground to give us their needs for the next day. And when we do that, we have several meetings that the team folks do, and we talk about what is our plan, what are we going to do with this thing in the next 24, 48, 72 hours, where are we going to be with this incident. So we evaluate that, and factors that influence that are the evacuations and the repopulation. The evacuations and the repopulation, we are in partnership with the sheriff who conducts the evacuations, but also gives us advice on when to repopulate. So things that we have to consider before we can let you get back into your homes. Do you have power? Can we safely let you guys in there to drive around or walk around and look with 34,000-pound vehicles driving around in there all over the place? As the chief said, we have 1,200 people out there. Well, they didn't walk here. They're all in vehicles, and they're all bigger vehicles than most of us drive daily. They're out there running around. I took a tour of the fire today with Chief Harris. Pretty narrow roads out there for our big fire engines. So if they meet one of your vehicles on the road, it's really not a fair contest. Those vehicles are heavy. So we want to make sure that you're safe, but also that our firefighters are safe as well. So the roads is one of the conditions. Your electricity to your homes, that you do have power when you go in there. My understanding is a lot of these homes are run on wells. So if you don't have power, you don't have a well unless you have a battery backup or a generator backup. Depending on how you're hooked in, if somebody hooks a generator up to power lines or to an electrical system and it's not what we would say, it's just ran by way of an extension cord into some power, you may energize some lines that are down on the ground. So the downed power lines is another issue. Pacific Gas and Electric is in there today and this evening taking care of those power issues and getting that stuff restored. Once we get all that stuff in place and we can take care of the snags that are out there, I mean, after these snags have burned for 24, 36 hours, they become weak. And if you're out there on a fire in the evenings, if any of you have ever been out there, trees are not silent when they fall. They make a lot of noise in the middle of the night, and all you can hear is wham! And you're out there and thinking, where in the world was that? And you turn around and look, and it's right behind you. So that's another thing that we worry about you folks. When you go in there, if a tree is weakened and a wind blows, it can put it right on top of you. So we're going to go through and we flag and we take down some of those hazard trees, as well as Pacific Gas and Electric does that, protect their infrastructure as well. So we'll coordinate that repopulation with your sheriff, and we actually had discussions about that this evening. Neither of us were comfortable saying that we could go in tonight. None of us were comfortable saying that we're going to be able to let people in there safely tonight. So that'll be discussions we have from this point several times throughout the day. The sheriff and I are side by side at our incident command post. We'll have those discussions daily and often daily. And when we determine that it's safe for you guys as well as our folks, then we'll make that decision and let you guys back in. Do we want to field questions now, or do we want to wait?
We could save the questions for the end, because we may be covered in just a little bit, and we'll be happy to answer your question. Don't forget what your question is, but we'll get to you. You'll be the first one I ask.
So in our planning process, what the chief said and what Chris said was several days of mop-up with these heavy fuels. We want to make sure that we're in an adequate distance so that if the wind does come up, it doesn't push an ember outside of what we're calling our containment lines and start a new fire. So we want to be sure when we leave that we hand off to Chief Harris and his staff a fire that all they have to do is drive around, and maybe every now and again they're going to find a single smoke here and there. So You're going to see us in town for a few days. We're going to be here for a while. However, it's our job to get this thing done as quickly as we can, but effectively. So we're going to make sure that it's done when we leave. Chief Harris will let us know when he's ready to take this thing back. So, Chief?
Well, and to give you an idea of the shifts that we're working, we have firefighters working 24 hours a day to expedite getting you back in your homes. So it's not that we're only out there during the daylight hours. They're working day and night, trying to, both PG&E, the firefighters, the sheriff's department, everybody that's working on this incident is working 24 hours a day to get you back into your home as fast as we can. I know I've asked a lot of you to be out of your home for the last 2 days. I'm going to have to ask for more patience. There's just no way around it. It's not safe currently to allow people to go back to their homes and potentially get injured. To give you an idea of the dangers that exist out there, does everybody know how a transformer works? It works in both directions. So it takes that high energy wire, goes through the transfer, gates it down to the energy that's used in your home. Well, if a generator's in the system somewhere and it's pumping out 110 back into the system, it hits that transformer and it re-energizes it to the high energy level. Well, now those high energy lines that were way up in the air are laying on the ground. So we have that potential out there, but somebody coming in contact with a power line that ultimately will kill them. I mean, that's just there's no other way around it. There is no minor touch of an energized electrical line. Either you're hit or you're not. So we take those concerns into consideration. Also the fact that the hazard trees are out there right now. We need to get those on the ground so they don't fall on anybody. So we're working diligently. We're working around the clock. And our goal is to get you back into your home as quickly as we can. John will probably talk about a little bit how we're going to notify you when it's time to go back home. There's several systems that are in place. We'll be working through the public information system, both with the Sheriff's Department, the Placer County, and with the team that's in command right now. So we'll blitz everybody with the information as soon as we get it. But I'm going to have to ask for your patience. We can't do it tonight. Just can't do it tonight. And it's probably not going to be tomorrow morning either. It's just we've got a lot of work that we got to get done. We're going to need your patience and indulgence to make sure that the work is done properly and that it's safe when we send you home. So with that, you know, I'd like to thank the cooperators that have helped us out on the incident. First of all, Placer Hills Fire Protection District. Chief Gao and his folks have done a phenomenal job in the things that they've done to help us to not have these fires occur up to this point. Unfortunately, when you got 5 fires burning on your doorstep, you get overwhelmed very quickly. And we were able to recover from it. The good news is it's 420 acres and it's not moving. But again, we got weather coming our way. We got things that are going to work to our disadvantage, and we're doing everything we can to overcome those disadvantages to make sure that we get this fire contained, that it doesn't get bigger than 420 acres, and that we're doing everything we can to get you guys back home. There are, you know, I talked about earlier that there were 5 or 6, homes that were destroyed in the fire. At the end of this, there's a couple more speakers. I'll name a few streets. I'd like those people that live on the street to come up, meet myself and Lieutenant Borden from the Sheriff's Department, and we can give you the status of your home. And again, when we talk about those streets, not every home in those streets were damaged, but there were 6 homes that were damaged, and we want to be the ones to give you that information in person rather than you hearing it through the grapevine or other sources. So with that, John.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, real quick, we got a lot of experts here. We got Health and Human Services, our Chief Medical Officer. Yeah, but before we get to some questions, I promise I'll get you to questions. Okay, and we got several other folks. We got PG&E here as well. Where's PG&E? We got PG&E back there. Before I give it over to Dr. Rob Oldham, our health officer. In terms of notification, who came to this meeting because of a press release? A few. Who got a computer call on your phone or your text or your cell or whatever? Okay. All right, that's our Placer alert notification. It's an Everbridge alert, and we can talk more about that. Essentially, real quickly, you can go on to Placer Alert, www.placeralert.org, and you can register for that. And you can put up, I think, up to 5 addresses with, and you can have them. You can actually identify how you want to be notified in the event of a alert message that goes out. So we'll talk a little bit more about that if you want, but I'd like to move on now to Dr. Oldham, and then you're still going to have the first question, ma'am. Okay.
Thank you, John. And the PowerPoint. So my name is Rob Oldham. As John said, I'm with Health and Human Services. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to tell you about some of the resources that are available to you, supports that are available. Let's see. So Health and Human Services, our role in a wildfire like this, first is to support the American Red Cross and operation of the shelters. We directly operate the animal shelters. We monitor air quality and make recommendations to the public. Luckily, the air quality with this fire we haven't had quite as bad a problem as with the King Fire, but it's still something that we're monitoring closely. And finally, working to preserve environmental health, particularly as we move into the recovery phase. I believe everyone has the list, and I believe have it posted outside as well, but these are the mandatory evacuation areas, which I'm not going to read through, but this is available on the Placer County website as well. And then just a list, this is also available on the Placer County website of the current evacuation shelters. So last night we had 3 human shelters and 1 animal shelter. Tonight we're down, we've consolidated to 2 human shelters, so 1 here at the Auburn Veterans Memorial Hall. Again, there's no animals there. Likewise, at the Sierra Vista Community Center, no animals. And then finally, we do have for animal evacuations, an animal shelter functioning at the Gold Country Fairgrounds. So the way the sheltering works, the incident management team will determine if and when evacuation and shelters is necessary. So as I mentioned, we have those evacuation areas. We have, tonight we'll have 2 human shelters, 1 animal shelter up and running. If and when the evacuation and shelter is necessary, we'll send out an automated phone message, be sent to all the communities in the impacted area, but also local media will promote the need, and then the Sheriff's Department will go out and do door-to-door notifications. One of the areas that we support is people who have medical needs and other special needs in the shelters. So please, if you are going to utilize the shelters, first of all, if you don't have to utilize it, then if you have other resources, if you have family that you could stay with if you're evacuated, we encourage you to take advantage of those resources. However, if you do need to utilize the shelters, bring your medications, bring a cell phone, including a charger, if you need to rely upon that for communication, and anything else that you need. If your health issues, for whatever reason, make it where being in the shelter will be difficult, the American Red Cross and Placer County Health and Human Services will work with you to identify solutions. And so we have lots of different resources. We're kind of the broker of all the resources to try to support you to get you what you need. Lots and lots of questions. Actually, the majority of the questions today are around sheltering of animals. So a couple of points. Animals are not allowed in the human shelters except for service animals. So certified service animals are allowed. Otherwise, we do have shelters available, animal shelters, and we will help you to get to your animals to those shelters. Important point that during an emergency, Animal Services responds to the Sheriff's Department and the Department of Office of Emergency Services. So they don't self-deploy. So we encourage you, especially during evacuations, to identify your needs for animals to get out of the evacuation area, and the Sheriff's Department will help and will contact Animal Services. The Animal Services will assist you with getting your animals out, can assist you with transporting your animals to a shelter, and also checking on your animals when you're evacuated. The cost for all these services for animals is free, and really the goal is to release the animal back to the owner, and sometimes we can help transport the animals back home. Important point when we get to recovery, the reentry is that we encourage you to go check your home first and make sure that it's safe both for you and for your animals, that your pens or whatever are safe. So we would recommend going home first before you pick up your animals to go home. If one of the other issues I mentioned that with a king fire was more of an issue than so far with this fire, thankfully, is the air quality. We're involved in issuing health advisories with our air pollution control district, coordinating with hospitals and doctors. We kind of monitor for things like exacerbations of asthma and that sort of stuff to see what the health impacts are. And that gets important when we get to looking at things like community outdoor events, including football games and other sporting events coming up, to make sure that everyone is safe, and we make recommendations to those community organizations. We also make recommendations to the schools, but ultimately it's the superintendents who make the final call on whether schools will be in session or not. And we've worked out a system now where we're communicating very early in the morning to make those decisions, and they communicate that out. So if you usually check on the website, the school have ways of notifying you, but also on TV, they're posting those very quickly after the decisions are made. And finally, as we move into the recovery phase, our role with environmental health is providing consultation to you with respect to health and safety for reentry in the fire area, including giving consultation about how to handle hazardous materials, personal protective equipment. So do you need masks, do you need gloves, those sort of things. We can provide that consultation of how to keep you and your family safe as you go back into the burn area. And finally, for fire debris management, we can provide consultation and tell you about resources to help assist with that. And I have links and resources, phone numbers. I will be around for the rest of the night. I know we're going to have some time for questions, but also if people have particular questions, please come up and find me. I have some additional handouts that I can give you as well. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and start with questions, and we'll start over here. The question is how you're going to be notified when you can get into your homes. What we're planning on doing, there'll be a couple different ways. We'll be releasing a press release. We'll also be able to call our Placer County hotline, and that number is 530-886-5310. That's 530-886-5310. And they'll probably, tell you the truth, there'll probably be several other ways as well, but those are the two ways that we'll be definitely trying to reach as many people as possible.
I have a second mic so we can go.
Okay.
What's the difference between a mandatory evacuation order and an evacuation Everbridge message only? My street is not on the mandatory, but yet I cannot get back into my house.
I'm going to bring up my expert on that one. I'll try and give it a shot. A mandatory
evacuation order versus an evacuation Everbridge message only.
Okay. What we're trying to say there is that we're going to be able to, and I'll let, where'd he go? I'll take a shot at it, and then when I get shot down and you send me out of here, I'll turn it over to the guy with the gun. Okay? What we're trying to do is when there's a mandatory evacuation, that's law enforcement. We're trying to tell you, you have to get out now.
Okay.
When there's an advisory evacuation, we're suggesting it, recommending it, that it's probably a good idea if you can. It's probably a good time to leave. We're trying to eliminate that period if we say everybody goes now and then the roads are just completely jammed up. Okay? The Everbridge issue was, and that's from the frequently asked questions?
No, it's just from the area that my street's listed on.
Okay. What we're trying to do is just get you the information out. And so you've been evacuated. What you're saying is you've been evacuated even though it's not on the mandatory evacuation list.
Exactly. And I got a robocall saying it was mandatory.
Okay.
But yet my street's not on the mandatory list.
Okay.
Why can't I get back in and get another vehicle that I need to get out?
At this point, I'm going to turn it over to the guy with the gun. Well, and we'll talk after as well to get that situation fixed, no matter what the guy with the gun has to say. Okay.
Thanks, John. My name is Kevin Borden. I'm the watch commander for the Sheriff's Department and assigned up to the fire. That's a great question there. The Everbridge notification system, that's an early warning system for you folks. So we try to give you a little advance notice if we have a critical incident or something. We do the best job that we can to try to identify an area, a specific polygon. In other words, if you live in a particular area, we have dispatch basically draw, let's say, a quarter-mile box or a half-mile box or a circle diameter area of the area that we want to try to notify folks that we're going to go ahead and do an evacuation, or we're going to do an evacuation notice and give people a warning. We try to give folks a warning just to give them advance notices. Maybe we don't catch every single street there. Maybe you live on a rural street. I don't know what the exact issue was right there. But once we get people out there, if you're in an area that is affected by the fire where we have people out, even if your street isn't on there, and we haven't been able to identify maybe every single street, maybe there's a side street there, and we'll certainly look at what you've, your address there. But once people are out, then we have to prevent them from going back in because it's for your safety, and we don't want them interfering with the firefighters so that we can provide the safety for those folks too.
Thanks.
I'm going to go close and then we'll go.
Yeah, I was wondering what percentage containment you need before people are let back in.
I'm going to turn that one over to Chief Harris. I'm going to be doing this a lot, actually.
Yeah, I hate to see you kick John out. It really doesn't have to hit any certain percentage of containment. The thing that we're looking at are those benchmarks. Is it safe for the public to come back in? Have we mitigated all of the potential life hazards that exist in that area? And is it safe for the firefighters to let everybody back in? So percentage of containment isn't going to play into that equation at all when we allow repopulation into the area. And when we allow repopulation, another thing to take into consideration is when we let you back in, we only want to let you back in. We're not going to just open the gates and say, everybody, it's time to come back in. There's going to be a process that's developed that we identify you as the property owner that belongs there. Because believe it or not everybody is a stellar citizen out there. And if they hear that we've opened the gates, that gives them free run of your home until you get there. Because without doing an identification check, without making sure that you are the person that needs to be in that particular residence, there's no way that I can tell you from somebody who doesn't need to be in there. So that's part of the planning process. They'll be developing an identification system and a check-in system, working with law enforcement to make sure it's you and only you that comes back to your property. Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to say thank you for your quick response. I think it was very awesome when I got up there from work to see all the fire airplanes out. I think you guys did a great job. My question is I'm on the other side of 80, right off of Heather Glen, and the Heather Glen exit's closed. How do we get back into our houses since we're on the other side of the fire, or are we still evacuated as well?
Again, are you part of that process that was talked about earlier where they did the this Everbridge system that called and you were notified that you're supposed to evacuate, or you just get caught up in the road closures?
We just got caught up in the road closures.
What's that?
I can address that way.
Okay.
Yeah, the access to your residence in there is behind the road closure. There's no way into it. So I'll work with Kevin Borden here to identify that area. Could you meet with us afterwards, and perhaps we can work with the team and identify that and get you folks into your homes?
Sure, thank you.
That's a possibility.
Probably for you the question. Let me get you the mic, sir, so people can hear the question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about when you were going through the map, there was a section that you still hadn't closed off at the southern portion there in the middle. Do you have an anticipated time? I know it's there's no way of getting absolute, but how long it might take to close that up?
The question was on the fire perimeter that's not controlled in Codfish Creek, estimated time of perimeter. There was about a half mile of open line in there, Progress will slow tonight because it is nighttime. Those hazards increase as we point out we can't see, but I would estimate probably operational. Our hope is by morning we can connect that dot. And here's the big if. If we don't get more rollout, we got to chase it down the canyon, and if the line holds right on that mid-slope right there. Operationally, the challenge is mid-slope firefighting is always dangerous. It's always challenging. You know, here's a good example. A dozer pushed a rock over 50 years ago. It rolled up to this log. That log's been holding that rock in place for 50 years. That log burns out, that rock comes down, our firefighters are out there. And that's what we got to do. So we could literally have a safety event like that where operationally our folks say we can't go any further tonight. So the goal is by morning, but we cannot guarantee that because the fire will dictate those terms. Another question on that.
I live on East Weimar Crossroads, which is probably about a half a mile away from the John Muir Trail that you still have closure at. And another thing, I want to thank you all for being responsive like you were yesterday. It was amazing. It was amazing. Anyhow, I'm wondering if I can go back into my property, or is the evacuation, I live on Sunset Way. It runs parallel with the railroad tracks. If you could show me on the map where the railroad tracks are, which is parallel with 80. How is it, where is it burning, and is it burning up towards Colfax, or is it coming down?
Here's Colfax up here, all right? Here's the railroad tracks coming down here. Here's Ponderosa is here. I don't have my glasses on, so bear with me here. East Weimar. It's off the map. Yep. Yeah, it's off the map up here. East Weimar up in here. And Sunset Lane, it's just blurry to me here. But here's railroad tracks here. I believe Sunset's.
Yeah, it runs. It's like a rural road.
Yeah, you're up here, man. The fire is quite a ways down from there. If you look at Ponderosa Road and the ridge lines in here, that's kind of our primary holding lines.
Okay, but Ponderosa wasn't that far away from the homes in the little Weimar Valley that was, there
Right back
yesterday. Yeah.
That is still under an evacuation order.
So it's not really safe to go back in right now.
No, it is not. One of the big things we do is we have our incident meteorologist, our IMET, and they use a fire behavior analyst, and between our weather person, our fire behavior person on the team, they make some predictions of what can happen based on weather and fuel, and so right now we're looking at those conditions.
So is it close to burning in that area that I was?
Right now, the lines are holding. It is not advancing, and so there's good news on that.
Okay, thank you.
We just got to get through a couple weather windows, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
How about in the very back?
Can you,
I am told I live in Colfax, but I live on Swanson Lane for starts.
Okay.
So where do I live?
Well, apparently you live right here, right now.
That's very true. Okay, my question is, my friend was able to break through the police barrier on foot to come and help me because they wouldn't allow her to come in and help me rescue my horses to pull the trailer. And I must say she was barefooted, so she ran 2 miles. But my question is, my neighbor that lives right above me, she's on top of the mountain, I'm cut into the mountain. She was notified to evacuate within 3 minutes. I never got a notification. No one came to my house. Myself and my neighbor below me were the last 2 people out of there. And I went on my quad to only find out that everybody else was gone. I want to know what happened. I'm not happy.
Well, and I can understand that.
I have horses.
Okay.
And I have animals.
Okay.
And I own 2 houses on that street. And
in
neither one was notified.
And in the initial stages of the fire, we went through the Everbridge notification system as one notification method. The only other notification method that we had was to utilize the sheriff's deputies. The firefighters were actively involved in fire suppression at that time, so we have a choice. Either we try and put the fire out and keep it to a minimum amount of people that we impact, or we don't put the fire out and we go door to door and allow the progress of the fire to continue.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the door to door, but
yeah.
You know what? We're rural, and my neighbor above me and the neighbor before me was notified when I went on my quad. Everybody was gone. It was like a ghost town until you got to my house.
And again, without being there when the deputies were going door to door, I just don't know exactly why they didn't hit your particular residence.
Yes.
They were out there doing a very diligent job and hitting the residences as they could. In the initial stages of the fire, it's very confusing. And you got to understand, too, not only were we doing firefighting to try and suppress the fire, we were actively engaged in rescues. In some instances, we were having to drag people out of their homes. They
and
didn't
I
want to go.
understand. And you know what? If
it's a matter
someone
of
would have come
staffing.
to my house and asked me to help, I would have been there on the dime.
And we appreciate that. We're sorry that you didn't get the notification in the timely manner that you thought you should. We did our due diligence and to get the staffing, make the notifications as best we can. Sometimes when you live in a rural area, houses are easily missed, and they did their best to do it.
Not two.
Again, ma'am, there's not an answer I'm going to give you that's going to make you happy.
Well, you know what? I appreciate what you guys have done, and I don't know if there was a lack of communication between the sheriffs and the fire department.
There
But you know
absolutely
what?
was not a lack of communications with
Okay.
the fire department. We do this all
They
the
were
time.
on the street.
You live in a rural area, and unfortunately, you didn't get the service that you
Nope.
think you needed. I'm sorry you didn't get the service that you thought you needed. We did the best we could with the staffing we had. We've taken a very dangerous situation. We've mitigated the dangerous situation to the point that the fire is contained. We're working the best we can to bring you back into your homes. That's the best we can do.
Well, I have to disagree with you, but I think you guys are doing a great job, the firefighters.
If we were in an area that's pretty much out of the fire zone, but we're in an evacuation area, I live down the street from the lady that's on that other notification thing. Is there a reason to think that we lost power? If the power wasn't knocked out by the fire, did PG&E go through and turn our power off, or was it mainly in the fire area?
You know, as the fire was progressing, we were working with PG&E to de-energize lines so that we knew the fire was going to progress into those areas at some point. The potential was there. So we work with PG&E to get ahead of it, to do grid shutdowns in a given area. It takes a long time to do that, though. So whether in your particular case it was a grid shutdown at our request, or whether it was because of a fault in the system because the fire burned through a pole, through a transformer, I couldn't tell you. It's something you'd have to ask PG&E.
I guess my question is there a reason to expect that we did lose power at some point in the last 24 hours?
If for some reason you're in that immediate fire area, yeah, you've lost power.
No, we're way down, actually on the below Heather Glen.
Okay,
and
yeah.
I was just curious if the power was.
We do have a PG&E rep, and he can probably let you know exactly what grids were affected.
I got one other little quick question. Sure. When you start checking IDs going in tomorrow, a lot of us have PO boxes and not addresses on our driver's license. Yeah. So what are we going to do about that?
And that's one of the details we'll be working out with the Sheriff's Department and Lieutenant Borden to see exactly how we're going to verify who's supposed to be in there. There are means to do that, I'm sure, through the Sheriff's Department. So
okay.
We just want to make sure that we are very diligent in making sure that you and only you are the one that get to your house first.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so what happens in these situations is initially there will be a fault in our system and we'll lose a larger population of customers that are out of power. And at the peak, I believe there were somewhere around 400 customers that were out. Working closely with the incident command system, we work to sectionalize our lines and make sure that the firefighters are safe, the public is safe, and our employees are safe. And working in conjunction with the incident command system, we can de-energize lines, re-energize lines, de-energize lines again. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that can happen in there. Right now, we have about 80 customers that are out of power in the general area. But again, that can change depending on what the fire does. It sort of dictates what happens, and we follow the direction from the incident command system.
So if I understand his question correctly, is there any way that you can, if you have his address, determine whether or not he has power service currently to his residence?
I believe we can, yeah. So maybe we'll talk afterwards.
I have a question for PG&E too. We're kind of in that area that's not totally controlled. If our power went out and then you turn it back on again, how are we going to know if the stuff in the freezer's good or if we need to just dump it? Can we call someone?
The smell test works, I think. I mean, I'm not sure.
Well, if it's frozen, you're not going to know. If it refreezes again, because you're going to turn power back on before we go home.
I'm not sure how to answer that. I think you're going to have to use some common sense there and use your best judgment.
Tough one right there.
Okay, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Besides thanking all the firefighters, the sheriff's department, and I don't see CHP here, but I want to publicly thank them for handling this with such compassion and caring and answering the same question 100 times to all of us that. Thank you. Thank you, staff. They went out of their way to help us. We had animals that were stuck, and they actually went and checked to make sure everything was okay. But their compassion, the way they talked to us, you have a wonderful staff, and I really appreciated that very much. Thank you.
Where did John go? Where's John, the emergency guy?
You must have chased him off. John McEldowney?
Yeah. He gave out a phone number. It was like an emergency phone number to
He'll be here in just
call.
1 minute. And I would like to make a pitch for John and his shop. The Everbridge program that he's talking about is a very useful tool. John, I'm sure will give you the information as soon as he walks up to the microphone on how you can get your cell phone registered to that program. Remember, in this area, wildfire is not our only potential disaster that we deal with on a daily basis. You live in an area that the railroad runs through on a regular basis, carrying all kinds of different hazardous materials and things that could cause you to have to leave your home in a hurry. Underneath that railroad is a buried pipeline that has the capability of doing the very same thing. You live along a very active transportation corridor with Interstate 80 where hazardous materials travel across that corridor almost by the minute. So having notification into the system is very important, not to mention the fact that we deal with a variety of weather in this area. Today we're dealing with wildfire. A couple months from now, hopefully, we'll be dealing with snows and blizzards.
Yes, hopefully.
And all of that requires a degree of notification. John and his shop work with the Everbridge system, and I'm sure that he can let you know how to sign your cell phone up for it so it's not just linked to your home phone.
So just to go through the Everbridge Placer Alert system, it's www.placeralert.org, and I will stay after the meeting, after it breaks up. We're about the 8 o'clock point, but again, you just go to that, log in, register, and you'll be able to identify whether you want a cell phone, a text, or an email. And there's a question back here, Dieter. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I want to second all the people who have thanked all of you. I just appreciate you. But I have a question, and all my neighbors were we were like, what's going on? Because on the same little street off of East Weimar, two of us who have landlines got notification on the first Evergrande, said get out. Two didn't, and so we're going, what do we do? Well, we just happened to know someone who knew a highway patrolman that was at the command center, and they said, you're fine, don't move. So we didn't. And that, but that was first one that came out to us. It did not come out text, despite the fact that all three of my family are on that.
You're registered.
We're registered.
Okay.
We got the meeting
Today,
text,
for
but
today,
nothing
right.
about the evacuation, nothing
Right.
about that. But then today we got a call from the sheriff's department saying voluntary evacuation. And again, the people that know people called those
Right.
people and found out we were fine to stay.
Right.
But what I'm wondering is, there was such confusion there because some of us did, some of us didn't. We didn't get, I mean, I don't understand quite, is that a new, I know it's a new system, but is there bugs that are being worked out, and are they going to be worked out so that this happens? And you're saying if there's a problem other than fire, we should get a notification. But if we didn't even get the notification on our cell phones that we were in a fire area and there was a fire, how are we going to get other ones? The only way I found out and notified my neighbors was because my daughter happened to be at work where they were monitoring another system, the Ubinet, and told them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what's going on? I mean, all my neighbors are confused.
Right. Let me try and frame that up a little bit, and I'm going to try and give you the best answer I can. The system, it's not new necessarily. We recently signed up with it here in Placer County, so it's relatively new within the county. The other thing, it's a computerized system, but there's still human involvement. We got to sit down and decide where we're going to target which area and how we're going. How we're going to do that and what area is going to be targeted for the message, that type of thing. What I'm also seeing, not just for your question today and your feedback, which by the way is very, very valuable to us, and I appreciate that, but we are seeing that 3,400 calls went out in Forest Hill, and 2 or 3 people didn't get notified. So I think there's some bugs or some kinks in the system. Overall, when you think of what we had before compared to what we have now, it is a quantum improvement. It is not, and probably, quite honestly, never will be perfect. Okay? So
No,
I guess...
And to add to that, John, I would encourage everybody to sign up to the other system because I don't know how many of you remember the old, we call the Mother's Day effect. If you try to call your mother on Mother's Day, you got all circuits are busy. So what we have here is an automated system that actually picks up all the lines and competes against what's happening out there in your environment. So you're calling your neighbors, you're calling your family members and so forth. So we're competing to grab those lines to notify you. So if your line is busy, the system's going to get a busy signal. So we keep making calls as those lines are available. So it's that, we wrestle against that Mother's Day effect as well. So the best thing to do, in addition to just those landlines, is to register on the Placer alert system so that we can send you texts and so forth. So give yourself the most capability of being reached.
And we did, but I think the thing that was bothering my neighborhood was that we had 2 neighbors right next
Sure.
to each other. Cell landlines. One got it, one didn't. 2 across the street, right across the street, one got it, one didn't. Not the text, but the
Sure.
Right. Right.
Yep.
And I certainly understand that situation, and I'm going to say this, I don't want to sound flippant because that's not what I'm trying to do, okay, at all, okay? But what I'm saying is if your neighbors are leaving and the people across the street are leaving and the people over here are leaving, and I'm not trying to be flippant, I'm just, but because your feedback is important, it's the only way we're going to make the system better is for you telling us what you just told us. Okay, so.
Just a quick related question to placeralert.org. I understand that its most important use is to let us know when we need to get going for whatever reason. Is it also used when you begin repopulation to notify individual homeowners when their mandatory evacuation has been lifted?
We're planning on using that as well during the repopulation process, whenever that starts. I don't know when it's going to start, and if you want to add on to something for that.
Again, when we start the repopulation process, we're going to use every tool available to us, including Seabridge, the press, whatever systems that we can reach out and touch and let everybody know it's safe to come back to your home. We're going to do that. Does that mean that we're going to be able to hit everybody? I don't have the ability to hunt you down and tell you that your home is safe to return to. So you're going to need to stay informed with the press. You're going to need to check the different notification systems that are out there. It's just impossible for us to know where you are and how to get a hold of you at every minute. So we're going to use every tool at our means to get a hold of you and spread the message far and wide that it's safe to come home.
Yes, what kind of volunteer support do the emergency personnel need? And how many miles from the fire do people need to be prepared to evacuate?
First of all, to your answer to your first question, we get all kinds of offers for volunteer support to help support the emergency responders that are coming into the incident. To be honest with you, we're very guarded with the types of support that we accept. I was one of the people that had the opportunity to evaluate the response to the World Trade Center and the 9/11 emergency. And one of the things that we found was that they were solely dependent upon voluntary donations to feed the firefighters, give the firefighters water and everything else. What we found is if they wanted to continue the terrorist act, what better way to continue the terrorist act than by doing harm to the firefighters by poisoning their food and water source. So as a result, we become very guarded with what our emergency personnel are consuming on the fire ground for a number of reasons. That being one of them, but the other one being that we're watching their caloric intake and the kinds of food that they are putting into their bodies. We're fueling the machine, and we want to make sure that the fuel that's going into the machine is the high octane stuff that we can keep them on the fire line for 24 hours. They're young guys and gals. Like your teenagers at home, they don't always make the good choices with what they're eating. So we as the adults make the choices for them. But besides that, we come equipped with everything we need. I think probably the best thing you could do is just offer them your thanks. We don't need food. We don't need water. We don't need that kind of stuff. We got that. Community support helps us out more than anything else.
Chief, just one item to add on that. If you do feel the need to donate, there are several organizations out there that can use the donations. I'm not going to name one by brand name, but there are several out there that are helping victims of the fire. If you want to donate, it's fine to donate to those folks because they can really use that.
I'm sorry, I forgot that portion of it. Again, the fire and Mother Nature is going to dictate that to us. In the instance that we had here, we knew that the fire was spreading in a certain direction. We knew that at a certain point of the day that it was going to turn around and go the other way. We knew that the conditions that we were seeing at the height was causing it to spot a quarter to half mile ahead of itself. So we took all of that into consideration, and that's what we used to determine that polygon, that big square that we drew around the incident for the evacuations. Fortunately, we were able to beat the fire back from what it wanted to do, and a lot of the evacuations that we intended, that we thought we were going to need, we didn't need to utilize in the end. But on the very beginning of the incident, we wanted to make sure that we had evacuated enough people in the appropriate areas that should the fire spread where we had the potential and the possibility of the fires going, that we were able to get the people out safely, get our firefighters in there so that they can do the job they do.
Is the fire retardant that you're putting on the fire harmful to animals when they come back?
No. The retardant that we're using right now, and again, in my short career, it's changed formulation several times. But the retardant that we're using right now acts more like a fertilizer than anything else. The dye, the pink color that you see in it, the reason it's pink is it's easier to see from the air when they're trying to connect drops together. In a lot of cases, it's what we call fugitive retardant. That pink dye will dissipate and fade out over time. It is a salty substance that will corrode, so we're careful to wash it off of metal surfaces as quickly as we can. And if we miss some, you need to wash it off any metal surfaces that you may have at home when you get back home. But as far as highly toxic, no, it's not highly toxic. It's irritating when it gets on you, not because it stings or anything else. It just has the consistency of snot, and you can imagine walking around all day like that.
The company that owns that big 3-story building on Elm, just up from 49, it's been empty for a long time. They are making that available as a collection center, and they have resources to collect stuff, to gather things. What they really need is to know what people's needs are. They're thinking particularly people whose homes are destroyed or needs that they have. And so it's called the Saratoga Group, and they have a website, a web page up. It's saratogagroup.net, and I have a phone number. I'll just give it just in case. It's 530-210-4226. So if they have resources to collect things. They mostly need to know what people need, and that building's going to be available to collect things and for people to come and get what they need.
These young ladies up here.
Well, we were interested in, and I understand that you guys can't predict exactly what's going to happen, but the section that you may or may not be able to close off in whatever time frame, you said if that doesn't work, it's going to go south and then climb up the canyon again.
Yeah.
Can you do both? Yeah, I can do both here. Very quick, referring to this section of open line here that our folks are currently working tonight. What we have is approximately from here. I got to back up here. My old eyes here are starting to fail here. Okay, now I see it. We have a dozer line. Right now it comes down just like this. This dozer line comes down and it turns and goes here. So that dozer line is our secondary, our primary lines are the firefighters on the line itself. The dozer line is already put in and established, and we locate our lines the best we can between the fire and your homes and your property. So that's that defense line in there.
24, 48, 72 that I mentioned is that we have to start up and fighting right now on the line, 24, 48, 72 hours out. Where could it be? And we're establishing a secondary line that if it doesn't pass that first one, we're already out in front of it. Should it jump the first one, we're going to go out again.
I have a concern when the weather changes and the rains come and we have ash and mud coming down the hill. The elevations are so different, and I know our area, we're right on a hillside, and so if the fire didn't take the house, the mud's going to cause a problem. Is there any direction for us? Anybody that can help us know what do we do?
Well, that's a multi-phase answer. The first part of that answer is what are we doing on the incident to reduce those possibilities after we leave, after the fire's out, the firefighters are gone. We have what we call fire line repair plans. So all of the dozer lines, all of these hand lines that we're putting in, before we leave, we make sure that we have reduced the possibility of erosion because of the fire suppression efforts that we have taken. The other thing, the second part of that is a reforestation issue because it is timber. It burned off of your private property. There will be declarations passed in the near future, and I'd have to turn that over to Jennifer to talk about what the county's going to do as far as emergency declarations and the possibility of getting into some reforestation grants to replant and replenish the vegetation that was destroyed as a result of the fire. And then beyond that, as the rains come, it's again incumbent upon emergency services and county services to monitor the situation and to take as many preventative measures, whether that's sandbagging, putting, visqueen on hill slopes, or things like that to reduce erosion. Erosion is going to be an issue that we're going to have to work with. It's just a fact of life when we have a fire of this magnitude go through that as much as the fire damages when it burns, the potential for, for erosion is even greater. So I've been up for 2 days. I'm dying. So as far as the county's response, I'll let Jennifer talk.
Thank you all for coming out. I'm Jennifer Montgomery. I'm the county supervisor who represents the area. And I have a little bit of insight into this. My husband's a firefighter, and I met him when I was a volunteer. One of the things that I really want to point out is that the fire folks who are out on the line right now and immediately following the fire do everything they can to minimize anything that would enhance erosion issues. On your own property, when you're back in there, it's critically important that you do the same thing, because we at the county, the firefighters, are probably not going to be able to come onto your property and remediate whatever might have happened on your property. The fire guys and gals may never have even been on your property, but just with the fire going over it, there's going to be enhanced issues with erosion. Another asset for the community in terms of this is here in Placer County, we have what's called the Resource Conservation District, and they're an agricultural base. They're actually a federal organization, but they're based here in Placer County, and they will be able to come out and help take a look, give some advice on what you can do on your own property to help address erosion issues. While I have the microphone, one thing that I really want to point out is a lot of the folks that you see here tonight are just here temporarily during the fire, and they're going to be gone. I'm still going to be here, so feel free to pick up the phone if you have any questions and call me. But someone who really is going to be here, I want to take the opportunity to introduce and ask him to come up and say a few words, and that's Chief Ian Gao, who's your local fire chief. Come on up. I always have to embarrass Ian on these things a little bit because we were at rival high schools. But, sorry, Chief. But one of the things that I think is really critically important to remember is your local fire district, before a fire and after a fire, is probably your best resource to help figure out how to make your home and your property more fire safe. And I say more fire safe because there is no such thing as fireproof. But I do want to just give Ian the opportunity to talk about how Placer Hills Fire, which is your local fire district, is going to be available to you after this, and if your home wasn't impacted by the fire, how they can come out and help you make some decisions about management on your own property. Because one of the big issues I know that the firefighters have dealt with in this is there were a lot of homes that had no defensible space work done. And we all know we should do it, and we don't always do it. But I'm going to turn it over to Chief Gao.
Thank you. We have a couple of programs. Before I tell you about those, I'd like to thank you all. Everybody kept coming up to our fire engines and our command cars and just thanking us while we were out there. You're all amazing, and you've been very brave. We know this is scary, but I'm hopeful that the worst is over. So you've done well. Just hang on a little bit longer. In the recovery phase, the fire department's heavily committed to the incident, but we've called back firefighters, so the Weimar and the Meadow Vista station are fully staffed. So if you need us, 911 will be there. In the recovery phase, if you need help with your property, just call the station. I'll schedule it, and one of us will come out and meet with you and help you. We have a program for elders or disabled people who can't clear their own property. We have people that can help do that for you. And any other advice you need, we'd be glad to come out and help you. Just give us a call. Probably the main office is best, 0405 Meadow Vista. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So, just so I get it straight, on East Weimar Crossroads at John Muir.
Yes.
Is it mandatory or is it voluntary to get into? I live on Sunset Way.
I think it's mandatory. You're not allowed in.
Not allowed in?
Yep. Still not allowed in.
Okay. Thank you.
And hopefully tomorrow we'll have a lot better news for you there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We live on the northwest side of the freeway, right where it says Twin Pines, so it's off of Giesendorfer Road. The whole neighborhood was confused about the content of the telephone message, whether we were included in the evacuation or not. So I hope next time, I hope there isn't a next time, and if there is a next time, we would like more clarity in the telephone announcement, and it conflicted with what was on the sheriff's website. Thanks.
Okay, I'm just going to try and address that a little bit, and I think the consensus is we're going to take one more question if there is one. But just to try, I think, first of all, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. If there's any questions when those Everbridge messages, Placer Alert, excuse me, when those Placer Alert messages go out, I'd encourage you to call the Placer County Fire Information Line. And again, that's 530-886-5310. And then to try and go into a little deeper, I understand what you're saying. Just in every evacuation or tough situation like that I've ever dealt with, there's always going to be, and I'm not trying to mitigate your concern because I think it is a valid concern, but there's always going to be a lot of confusion that we just kind of have to fight through that confusion period. Having said all that, I'm still hear what you're saying. Okay, I don't want you to think I'm discounting what you're saying because I'm not. Okay?
Yeah, we called the sheriff's office and the person who answered the phone was confused too.
Right. Right. And actually quite personally, I think that's a fun part of the job is just fighting through that confusion and getting to the key, really seriously, getting to the key information and getting that out as quickly and accurately as possible. I just kind of enjoy that, but I'm weird. So one more time around the room, unless there's no more questions, I think you probably have better things to do. Actually, one more thing.
Again, if your residence is on Sun Valley Road or on Paoli Drive, if you can meet Lieutenant Borden and I up here, we'll discuss the state of your property, at least give you an idea what's going on. Again, thank you for your patience. We're working as hard as we can to get you back into your homes. It's just going to take a little bit, and I apologize for that, but we're doing it as fast as we can. Thank you.